Hi, Brandon. Thank you so much for taking out the time for this. It's really cool that we're finally getting to chat.
Yeah, I'm excited. This will be a lot of fun.
Cool. Perfect. So, how about we just get into it? Before we exactly start with the questions, I really want to mention one thing, which is for the audience. So, I didn't find you through LinkedIn, which is perhaps the case for most of your audience, right? The people that get connected with you. I actually discovered you on YouTube a couple of years back when I was starting out my SEO career, and I was looking for just other people switching their careers and finding opportunities in the landscape of SEO and digital marketing. And I landed on one of your videos where you shared your journey of going from being a school teacher and then moving from the educational industry to marketing, and that really resonated with me. So yeah, so like me knowing about you and following your content goes way back to 2018. So I just wanted to share that story at the beginning.
That's really cool. I think, like we kind of talked about, it's neat, like getting to see people that stuff you've created has impact, right? I have the privilege of working right now really closely with RandFishkin at Sparktoro, and he's very much that for me, right? Like I watched so many Whiteboard Fridays when he was at Moz and all of this other stuff. I've seen him speak and everything. And it is really cool when you reach a point in your career where like people you have been following for a while, like you're at like a peer level with them,
Mm,
right? Like we get to talk
yeah,
today, we're peers talking on this.
yeah.
So I love that sort of stuff. I'm also excited. This is really valuable for me to hear because I'm making a push into video again next year. I haven't done a lot with video since I did SEO for the Rest of Us, the 100 Days of SEO project, and
Mm,
all the like vlogs and stuff that I was doing when I was trying to figure my life out as a young marketer. I'm going to make another push back into video because I really do believe in YouTube. I believe in all these video platforms. I look at my own behavior and it's so much video.
right.
So that's really encouraging to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I've seen you, leveling up your video game already on LinkedIn, with all of the nice editing
Mm-hmm.
and in the short video clips, etc. So the content game is really up from your site already. Um, okay,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
uh, let's get into it then. So I have a big list of things that I want to talk to you about. I've been following you for a long while now, and have many things that you talk about that I want to explore more deeply. So starting from your company, your SEO consultancy called GrowthSprints. Um, I've heard you talk about how it challenges the typical way of doing SEO, right? Specifically when it comes to the timeline of success attached with how stereotypical SEO is done, right? So I've seen you roast SEO agencies on their 12-month fixed contracts and how the typical SEO retainer model is broken, or at least it isn't a good option for all of the companies. So you, on the other hand, work in sprints, if I'm not wrong, and they can be as
Mm-hmm.
short as 3 to 4 months. You've mentioned a couple of times, so I'm really interested to learn about that model. What is it that you do that is different than most SEO agencies that are offering today?
So I don't want to I don't even say most SEO agencies. Let's say some SEO agencies. And if you're listening to this and you've worked with an agency like this, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You get sold hot and heavy in the sales process. You have this super charismatic salesperson or the agency founder, whoever, and they're giving you all these ideas. Look at all the possibilities. They're selling you the dream. And then you get dropped off at like Jeremy's desk, and Jeremy has been doing digital marketing for 6 months and is fresh out of college. And you're like, whoa. And Jeremy's going to run like, all right, for the first 30 days, we're going to run audits. And then we'll tell you what we found, and then we'll figure out what to do. And it's like, wait, you just made me sign a 12-month contract, and you can't tell me what you're going to do in month 7? Why am I signing that contract? Oh, because it's good for your cash flow, right? It's better because you can have like the retainer model benefits the agency. It's almost never the right move for you to pay like on retainer, especially in SEO where they do all the work in the first 2 to 3 months anyways, and then they drip it out to you. They give you 2 of these and 4 of these every single month, and it's just. I also personally, Usman, I like being liked. Like I like having friends. I like when people like me, and realizing that on the retainer model, all my friends would fire me. That's the only way that relationship ends. I'm going to try to get you to pay me forever, and you're going to fire me at some point. That also sucked. So I just decided, why don't I do business
Mm,
differently? I care more about relationships than anything else. I'm going to build my business model that way. It's also way more effective in terms of like actually getting things done. So, and there's some clients that I work with every year. Like we work together on a set number of sprints once a year or every other year. Like that's definitely happened, but that's not my goal. And to your point, yeah, I have definitely made the point loudly and proudly because it's true. And people don't want to hear that. Like agencies get frustrated because I'm I'm attacking their revenue, right? Like that's how they feed
mm,
their kids. And I get that. But and I have no interest in anybody not being able to feed their children. However, I do think it's fair to say, like most of the time, they say like SEO takes 6 to 12 months because they want to justify a 6 or 12 month retainer, right? SEO can take
yeah.
2 weeks. There's no reason for that, right? There's no we get in, we do the thing, and then you see the outcome over time, and it might take some time to see some input, like depending on how long a sales cycle is or how like all these different business things. Um, but yeah, I don't think it's out of line to say that I would argue more agencies and consultants and things like that should be working in finite sprints.
Right, right, right. It makes total sense. But if we get into the tactics of this, right, like on a tactical level, how would you
Yep.
define a sprint in the way that you work with companies? Is it like, for example, let's build a strategy together and then you take the execution onwards? Or how does it work on a tactical level exactly?
On a tactical level, when most clients come to me, right? We put together a growth projection of like, here's what I think. I'll run a few different scenarios, right? What's the business as usual scenario? You keep growing at the same rate you've been growing. I want to make sure my work is additive. Most people who do what I do, marketing agencies and consultants, they just take credit for stuff the business was doing anyways. They're like, oh, search traffic is up. Yeah, it's branded though, and you didn't do that. They did that. Things like that, or
Hmm.
like you'll probably keep growing. So there's the keep growing at the same rate, the like light improvement scenario, and then what I would call like a high growth scenario. And if we can align on a very conservative yet high growth scenario, we're probably a good fit to work together. In terms of like tactically, the sprints that I'll work on with different clients are different because people have different needs, right? When I was working with a recent client where they have one marketer and it's one of the co-founders, they're effectively a CMO or something, but they're the solo marketer at that company. That's going to be a very different scope than when I'm working with a $200 million a year software company that has a 36-person marketing team, right? They don't want me touching their website. They don't want me to have to get all that access and security and make an account and all these things. Like, they're just like, give us the stuff, we'll get it done. Perfect. I have other ones where it's like, we need you to hop on a weekly call because we're working some things out at the fundamentally core level of like messaging and product and things like that. Which I think is also important to touch on is that so much of my work has evolved. It started out in SEO, and I think that's still like a foundational skill set of mine. But so much of it has started to become like building a modern content engine, newsletters, LinkedIn, demand focused content, sales enablement, like really understanding how businesses work, seeing how content and other things like messaging and IP fit in there. And that's become like a bigger part of my work. I suspect as I push into YouTube in 2025, more clients are going to come to me and go, oh, I found you on YouTube. Could we leverage YouTube? Could you help us with that? And that's kind of like a lot of times people appreciate how the marketing is done to them, and then want you to do it for them. So, but tactically, it depends client to client, like what I'm doing, what they're doing. That's a part of figuring out what the scope is, which I always build with clients.
Right, right. Really interesting. I remember the time when you put on LinkedIn that you're going to be working on Sparktoro as the interim head of marketing, along with, like filling the shoes
Mm-hmm.
of Amanda. I was really interested to exactly know what is the kind of stuff that you would be working on, because now that Rand is into this sphere of doing marketing differently and not just being this SEO guy, etc. I was imagining that your day to day would definitely be way more than just SEO work, right? So it's really interesting how you mentioned about different, like tapping into other channels. YouTube, for example, you mentioned it's really, really interesting, really fascinating.
Yeah, it was. I mean, even in my scope of work with Sparktoro, a lot of that was maintenance pieces, things that needed to happen. We still wanted to publish our audience research newsletter every 2 weeks. I made that happen while Amanda was out on parental leave. Amanda has taken that back over now that she's back. But now my focus is helping them launch the V2 of their product. There is so much that needs to happen. Like they have a brilliant co-founder, CTO, Casey, who's amazing, who's built something I think genuinely incredible in Sparktoro that doesn't exist anywhere else and will really help a lot of people out. But it's also been like fun, just like help, like what does the site look like? Does pricing need to change? There's a lot of these things that marketers, I think when you get really excited about a channel like SEO, you forget there are things like the packaging, the pricing, the positioning, whatever the other P of there's 4 P's of marketing, right? Like those things have a way bigger impact on revenue than like this SEO blog that I wrote, right? Like, so I've gotten to do more of that stuff. And especially what's been a lot of fun is putting together the product launch plan. So we're launching beta access to existing customers literally today as we're recording this. Email went out. Existing paying customers have access to the new version of Sparktoro. But we're going to do a bigger public launch in January. So planning for that, getting those email, like all of the things that you think, like I'm building in a product called Navattic. I'm building an interactive product demo that'll live on the website so people can actually play around with the tool, get that aha moment ahead of actually even starting a trial.
Pretty amazing.
So it's been a lot of stuff like that. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And also just, Usman, answering, like, there's not a lot of people at Sparktoro. Like, they're a 3-person company, 4 if you include me during my brief time that I've been blessed to work with them. I'm answering support emails. I'm answering replies to all the newsletters we send. Like, it's been really cool getting to be very, very close to the customer and letting that inform the marketing that we're doing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I'm a really big fan of the kind of product and the company overall that Rand has built, along with other team members, Casey and Amanda, and you working with them now for sure. And it looks like the work culture, like not just the product itself, but also like the work culture, right? Like talking about how like his approach to on stress levels and managing burnout and those kind of things, and putting human centricity first and those kind of things on a company level.
It's all
awesome.
true, by the way.
Let's get
like
into
everything he says, everything they talk about, like chill work and all of that stuff. It's all real.
Yeah.
It's kind of unsettling if you're used to being in like a high-paced, frantic, manic startup environment. It's unsettling. Like they don't check in on you. There's no give me a status update. It's like we're in the middle of a very serious launch, and it is so chill that if you're not used to that, you can feel like, am I good? Does everybody here still like me? Are we good? Like you want to check in, but you don't have to, because it's just, so I don't know. It's nice to be able to say, like, as somebody who's, been injected into that culture, like it really is exactly what they say it is, which is wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into the weeds of building an SEO strategy, right? So that is a subject really, really, fascinating to me. So I talk a lot about how building an SEO strategy has been superbly narrowed in terms of tactics and the way it works on an executional level. So you talk about building an SEO strategy today in ways that should be way more than just keyword research through tools like Ahrefs or SEMrush, right? And I not just wholeheartedly agree with that, but I also have been a big cheerleader of that narrative. So my question is, how do you think this overall narrative around building an SEO strategy was built in the first place? Like, do you think there was something in the industry that happened that triggered or maybe took us into this direction, where now an SEO strategy is supposed to be way more about the customer, and we have to think beyond keywords. We have to think more about being in touch with the customer through either sales, support, and customer success. interactions and collecting insights, etc. Was it like a Google update? Was it something else that you attribute this transition to?
Yeah, well, I think what happened was like historically marketing was a lot about like focus groups and testing and putting things out there and seeing if it resonates and that sort of stuff. And it was a lot of like, even you saw a lot of like direct response marketing back in the day where they would test, small tests. Great, let's do our big mailing campaign and we're pretty sure it's going to convert at this and all this other stuff and like, or whatever it was, a magazine, etc. offer. And then we got into this world, gosh, probably 2010-ish, where we what was one of the first ones? Market Samurai, and there was a couple other tools, but you saw the rise of Moz, SEMrush, Ahrefs,
Yep.
etc. We all of a sudden had access to this new data we didn't have before. So everybody got excited. We're like, oh my God, Google took away the keywords that were converting out of Google Analytics. They're in Search Console still, but that's just ours. How do I see other keywords? Well, these tools were like, hey, we have them. And we got really excited about that. The problem was the pendulum swung too far. And we thought that keyword research was the same as talking to people. And it's not. And it created a culture in the SEO community where you do not talk to people. You don't talk to customers. You just look up the keyword. And what ends up happening is a content strategy becomes, we're a CRM. So I put CRM, this is a real story. We put CRM into Ahrefs. We export the full keyword list. We sort it by highest volume and lowest keyword difficulty, and we just go down the list. And that's our strategy. The problem is you end up making pages like, we made a page at ActiveCampaign that was like the difference between like CRM versus CSM. I don't even know anybody that would ever Google, like, why are we making this? We spent all this time on it. We created a brief. We sent it over to Animals, who's a great content agency, but they're just going to do what we tell them to do. They write this $1,000 blog on it, and then it never does anything. Why? Because it's not like it was, you forgot to actually see if a real customer would care about that. And I think we just kind of conflated keyword research with customer conversations. And I don't think it's happening at the pace I would like it to, but I kind of want the pendulum to swing back the other way, where content and marketing is more driven by what we hear from customers and what we hear from what I call the 3 S's, sales, success, and support teams. I want that to drive a little bit more of our marketing versus keyword research, which can just, it's not a proxy, right? It's a good data point. Let's use it, but let's back into it instead of starting there.
Yeah. This makes a lot of sense. I think for me, in fact, like the way I think about keyword research tools is that they can tell you how many searches are happening around a specific query or a topic cluster or things like that. But what they cannot tell you is who is the person behind those searches. So is it like an email, like maybe you sell as an email marketing software to really, enterprises, big companies, right? And your persona, the decision maker, is a director of email marketing or something, right? At a big company. How do you know that the keyword being searched is being searched by an intern or a junior person or maybe a director? Like you wouldn't be able to, like understand that from a persona level. So that makes total sense. Do you also think in the past couple of years, for example, right? Like at one point when companies would just export this list exactly as you mentioned, sort them with volume, difficulty, etc., and create a bunch of logs on it, it would still work, right? Like some would argue that a couple of years back, at least it was being perceived as it will work, right? And now more and more people are talking about how being more customer centric is more important. How going beyond keyword research tools is more important. Do you think is there something that changed in the way B2B buyers buy, or would you say it has never been the case that putting keywords first would put you into a good spot of building an SEO strategy?
Listen, 99% of the people saying Nobody Googles things anymore. They push this narrative of like B2B buying has changed. Those are all like Facebook ads agencies, just to be clear. Like, I'm going to dance around it without naming names, but everybody on LinkedIn who pushes that narrative that works at an agency, and you're like, what's that agency do? They're an ads agency. Like, I think sometimes we get a little nervous, like people, dark social and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, you got to, let's again, who's telling you this? What is their incentive? They're trying to get leads and do thought leadership for their advertising agencies. So they'll tell you SEO is dead. Nobody Googles things anymore, blah, blah, blah. The fact of the matter is just not true. Like one of the easiest ways to get on what I would call a consideration set. Now, in my world of software, right, primarily B2B, I want to be in somebody's consideration set. Mint just shut down, right, or is in the process of shutting down, which sucks. I use it personally and I love it. I'm now putting together my own consideration set of what tool do I use to run my budget in my household, right? Like my wife and I both use this. We want a level of transparency between us. I'm putting together a consideration set. This is a really important decision for me not to have marital strife where, like this is an important family decision of what app are we going to use for this. So I'm just putting together a list of like all these different things. And one of the first things that I did was I just Googled, I was curious. I found another one because I got served a TikTok ad for Rocket Money. I'd never heard of it before, but a guy that I've watched TikToks of said it was neat. So I put it on the list. And I think we forget that like people still do that quite a bit. They're not buying based off of like, if I Google email marketing software, I'm not going to go start a trial that day, but I just want a list of all the email marketing software I should look at for my business, right? Or if I'm looking for an alternative to something, like I'm going to Google that. Google's still alive and well, right? Like we may trust our peers' recommendations more, but most of the time, this is the other thing, like most of the time people are pretty bad at making recommendations. They don't have anything to recommend. So they'll be like, oh, I love this. And you're like, why'd you recommend that? They're like, love their podcast. You like their marketing. You never use the tool, right? So stuff like that happens too. So I don't think it's a change in how people buy. I think the competitive landscape for search has gone way up. We see that both in paid and organic. I think the competitive landscape for everything has gone up. The only place where I don't see competition going up is in like video necessarily, where it is like the bar is already so high that not a lot of people are entering there. Not a lot of companies are going into TikTok. Not a lot of them are going into YouTube and stuff. I think they should. But I think, so it's not a change in how buyers buy as much as it's just a change in the competitive landscape. But I think search absolutely can and should be part of a marketing mix if you have the resources to do it well.
Right. So what you're arguing is that being more customer centric is essential these days because of the competition playing into it, right? Like maybe in the past you would still win with SEO just being very keywords focused, but now the only way to stand out is being more customer focused, getting into those interviews, getting those insights from the teams, etc. Am I getting it right?
Yeah, and I've seen really creative ways of doing this too. Like the team at Copy.ai takes every single sales and success call, and they already use Gong, which kind of like analyzes that sort of thing. Then they take the call transcript, use their own tool. They use Copy.ai to run all of these different, essentially, reports out of every call. And then they just pipe those into Slack. So for every single sales call, here's what parts of the product are important. Here's where they were nervous about. Here's what they had questions about, all these different things. They can even use their own product to say, what 5 blog posts should we write based on this customer conversation? The AI will be like, I think you should write about these 5 topics. And then a human can go, well, those 2 seem dumb, but these 3 are really smart. We never thought about writing about these things before. Maybe this would really help our sales team, right? Maybe this would really help our existing customers and boost retention, that sort of stuff. I think that's where I want to go in terms of like where I think it has like a big impact. And that's where like we have to, like that needs to start leading the content we create and the strategy that we pursue, even from search, right? If we can back into keywords that the SEO tools say exist, great, right? We know there's some existing demand there for it. But we can also trust the fact that the SEO data is kind of weird. Like if you ever look into how clickstream data is put together. I think even a lot of well-meaning SEO people have no idea where the data comes from in the tool they use. They live and die by this tool, have no idea where the numbers come from. And it's intentionally ambiguous, right? Like all the SEO tools are like, oh, it's clickstream, which sounds nice. But they don't tell you that they're really just buying it from all these free Chrome extensions that track all your clicks because you gave them permission to, right? Like stuff
Right,
like that,
right.
which is why I love Sparktoro. Like one of their core data providers is Datos, which is an opt-in, and they compensate people. They say, hey, you install Datos, essentially. We're going to track all your clicks and all your internet behavior, but you're consenting to it, right? And you're compensated for that. So I like those sorts of models where it feels, and not that it's unethical, but like you should know where the data comes from. It's also old data. If you look in the SEO tools, that'll be like people are still searching for search terms that have 2021 in them. And you're like, I know nobody's doing that. Why would the tool say that? Well, because the data is old. So it is what it is. But I think there's so many
Right.
flaws in that sort of thing that marketing lives and dies by how close it is to the customer, by our proximity to the customer. If we can be the closest person or group within a company to the customer, closer than product, closer than sales, closer than success and support, marketing can absolutely win. And it also takes out all the debate of like, should we pursue this? Are they really Googling this? Are they not, to your point earlier about like, what's the title of people? Like, who are they that's actually searching this? Is it a college kid? Is it a teenager? Is it, a retiree? Or is it the director of product marketing at an ideal company for us? That sort of thing, I think, can be answered really easily when we heard about it from a director of product marketing at an ideal company. That sort of thing.
Right. So, talking of having customer centricity in one's SEO strategy, your 3S content framework exists so one can source customer insights from departments like customer support, customer success, and sales, right? However, I feel like not all marketers are equipped with the knowledge they need to either conduct that level of research and drive those insights from those departments. So or maybe to use those insights in building their own SEO strategy or content strategy. So if we break this into two different segments, let's say, right? One is sourcing that information from different teams, right? That um, customer information, either through direct customer interviews or maybe in a bigger team where you cannot talk to customers, you talk to sales, support, and customer success teams to gather that information. So I want to talk both of these two segments separately and try to pick your brain on this. So when it comes to sourcing insights, right, you talk to your teams in order to gather that information. You posted on LinkedIn a few weeks back how marketers often lack the skill set to interview customers effectively, right? Or maybe to their own teams. So they either
Yep.
don't ask the right questions or don't go deep enough. So I feel like now, since more and more thought leaders are talking about this practice, so many folks have started interviewing customers,
Yeah.
although they don't exactly use that information or don't know how to use that information in their strategy, in a smart way. Can you talk about what typically content marketers do wrong when interviewing their customers and what they should be focusing on instead to squeeze the most out of their interviews or customer interactions of any sort?
Yes. I want to say this first, though. If you're thinking about interviewing customers and you're worried about doing it wrong, and that is going to hold you back from doing it in the first place, stop listening. Go do that. Like that happens a lot where people think like, well, I have to do it right, which means I have to do all of this pre-work to then start. Don't start talking to customers today. If you ask your company, this happened when I was in-house at ActiveCampaign, I said, hey, can I talk to customers? They were like, no, we already have a customer team. We already bother our customers too much. I was like, fine, screw you guys. I went on LinkedIn, I just basically said, who do I know that uses ActiveCampaign? And that became my customer advisory board, right? Also, if you don't have a customer advisory board, start one. Have people that are invested of like, they get input on the roadmap, they get to see stuff early, they get excited about it, like that. Build that internally where you have a sounding board of like, hey, we're thinking of doing this. Does that sound dumb? And they're like, no, that sounds super smart. Cool, we're going to do this. I think what happens when I'll give you the fix here in a moment. What happens when we're not able to go deep enough This is also a skill gap. I'm glad that you said they lack like a skill set. This is a skill set. We think because we're marketers, we should be good at this. You're not. Like, it's a different skill set, which is fine because you can close that skill gap. A lot of times people will couch it under like almost like a moral thing where it's like, these are bad marketers. You're not a bad marketer. You're not bad at your job. You're not bad at it's not about getting good or bad. It's just there's more skills that you can learn. We're going to give those to you right now. I think what happens is when you lack this skill set, you end up hearing pain points, but they're almost like phantom pains, right? You'll hear this from people. I have a friend that lost his leg in combat and is amputated, like from the mid thigh down is an amputee, and all the time talks about like these phantom pains where like his leg hurts. Doesn't have a leg anymore. And I'm not saying this to be facetious, but like it's not there anymore, but the brain still thinks it is and it hurts, right? You end up with these like phantom pain points where like they think that's the pain point. So then what is that going to do? You're going to do all the right things because you're a good person, a good marketer. I want to like stay there. But like you do all the right things and you go make content about it and you're like, this isn't resonating. We heard this from 5 customers. They all said this thing, and we did a webinar about it. Nobody wanted to come. We posted about it on LinkedIn. Nobody replied. It seems like nobody cares about this. The problem is you're still at the surface level. You have to go deeper. The easiest way to go deeper is just say why, or tell me more about that, right? We can kind of role play this a little bit, where it's like, all right, cool. This sales tool helps your team do work faster, and it's like, well, why? Why do they want to do their work faster? And like you can ask why once. Well, they want to do it faster so they can like close more deals. Okay, why? And if you just keep saying why too many times, that puts people on the defense. Like if you and I were, Usman, if you and I were talking, you said something, I'm like, why? Eventually you're like, this feels like you're attacking me and I don't, like you'll put walls up, right? In order to keep those walls down, I read a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which is just about negotiating. And like, it just gave me like some practice. I'll give you 2 of them, right? That I thought were really helpful for me. One is called mirroring, where when they say something to you, you just say it back to them. So they'll say, well, they want to increase their productivity so they can close more deals. You say close more deals or close more deals. Like, and then they'll explain the rest of that. They'll be like, yeah, they want to close more deals because all these guys want to get rich. And then you just say, I love this line. Chris does this all the time. He'll go, seems like you have a reason for saying that. It's way better than saying, why are you saying that? But it seems like you have a reason for saying that. It's also a brilliant statement because it works universally. If somebody says something mean or nice, like no matter what they have just said, you can literally look at them and go, seems like you have a reason for saying that. And then they will tell you their reason for saying it. You end up getting, again, it's just a skill gap. You have to get better at asking these kind of questions. You can also learn. My buddy Ryan Paul Gibson has a really great free blog post on this. He also has a course on this. It's what he does professionally, is like customer interviews that walks through all of these great questions to ask, these jobs to be done questions, other questions. So there's also a skill set around like, what questions should I ask to get deeper? That exists online. You can find those. I won't repeat his work because it's amazing. But like that sort of thing is just a simple skill gap of like figuring out what to ask and how to ask it and how to peel back those layers. Because once you're 3 or 4 layers deep on like a pain point, all of a sudden the messaging changes, right? There's a big difference. If I was doing some sort of sales tech, there's a big difference than saying increase rep productivity or saying never get put on a PIP ever again, a performance improvement plan. Never get put on a PIP ever again, right? Those resonate very differently. But at the core of wanting to increase my productivity and hit OTE and all this stuff is I just don't want to be put on another freaking PIP ever. I happened and it sucked and I'm out of that company. I don't ever want that to happen again. Now you're resonating at a deeper level, right? We're using language that they would use with their peers of like, if I get put on a freaking PIP, I'm just going to quit, right? That sort of like, they don't say that at the surface level. But when you dig deeper, you find those things out.
I totally loved that, by the way, just so you know. Like that level of depth about
Sorry, I went
building
off on like
resonance
a
with the customer.
crazy tangent. I get really, yeah,
I
dude, this is important.
mean,
I'm sorry I like went on,
yeah.
like monologued at you for 5 minutes, but like it is
No, no,
really,
this
it
is
really is
amazing.
effective.
Yeah, no, this is amazing. I think like just understanding how this is a totally different skill set that you can still learn up to some level for sure, and you should learn if you're a marketer that want to be more customer centric. And you also mentioned this great book, which I'll just repeat because it is really great. Never Split the Difference. I read that. I'm a big fan of Chris Voss, and I like those two active listening techniques that you just mentioned have really impacted my own career in the way that I've learned to talk to VP of marketing or different CMOs within our own agency. So, but yeah, like I totally understand how you know people like even I like I'm not gonna pretend like I'm customer interview genius or something, but I've improved over time. When it comes to just gathering those insights. So that's like the one part, right? You source that information from your internal teams or directly from the customers. How do you translate it into a strong strategy, right? Like that's the second element to using those insights effectively. So I feel like again it could be a skill set gap thing, um, you know for marketers, because at the end of the day SEOs or content marketers need to just create content, right? Like that is the end goal in their mind. Of course, like they have their own North Star metrics attached with why they want to create the content, but creating content at the end of the day is one task that is in their mind actively. So if one can interact with customers directly once they've gathered that
Yep.
information and they've done it well, what is a step by step process for someone to fit those gathered insights into a broad level SEO, content, or maybe marketing strategy overall? Is there a framework to think of content ideas? Do you do keyword research afterward? How do you move forward from them from that?
Yeah, so this is not just SEO. Like this
Yeah.
if you're going to do this work, you're going to be well, the cool thing is if you're hearing me say this right now, you'll actually become like the customer whisperer in your company where people are going to start coming to you and being like, "Hey, what about this? What about this? What about this?" Like you become like the go-to person to talk to, which makes what we all want, which is a defensible career, right? You're the last person to get fired or laid off. You're the closest to the
Mm-hmm.
customer. Everybody in the company loves you, all these sorts of things. The way that I would do this is I would talk to at least 10 uh, ideal fit customers, meaning they're high NPS, they love you, they love the product, they love the company. They also are worth a lot of money to you. They're your ideal in terms of revenue. Talk to at least 10 of them. Talk to them, go through questions like this, like we kind of talked about. Again, you can look up all the questions you can ask. Um, get it transcribed and then mark it up. The way you're going to mark this up is you're looking for very specific, what is it like, push things that push them into making a buying decision, like they're being pushed away from something else, or pulls where they're being pulled in. You're also trying to mark up habits and fears. So push, pull, habit, and fear. Mark up for that. And I learned this from my former boss at ActiveCampaign, Benjamin Elias, who did that at ActiveCampaign. He's done it again at Podia. Um, we even have a post about this on the GrowthSprints website that I can give you the link for. We can maybe put it in show notes or wherever you share this out. But then for each of those, so push, pull, habits, and fears, underneath each of those, so 4 buckets, I need 6 for each that you have pulled out of the customer conversation. 6 different push forces, 6 pull, like 6 to 8 for each one of those. Then all of a sudden, now we have a basis that informs our messaging, that informs how we might think about looking at key. Like if I'm going to do an SEO strategy, if we're like, hey, that's a channel we want to play, we want to go all in on this. We're not, you can't just write 3 blogs and think you're going to win the SEO game. If you're going to invest in this, all right, cool. We're going to base our content strategy on these buckets, right? You know, these, whatever I said, 6 for each one, these 20 to 25 different like core topics. We're not going to let the keyword research, CRM versus CSM or whatever, decide what we pursue. We're going to, everything, if I ask you about why would we create that page? Why would we pursue this keyword, whatever? it has to map back to these core things that we know really, really matter. And I think that raises the floor for everything. All of a sudden, emails resonate more. All of a sudden, your social media resonates more. All of a sudden, like, people are coming to more webinars, like that sort of thing. And you can become like the central piece to something that helps everybody on your team, which is why I advocate for it so heavily.
Right, right, right. So if I'm getting this right, again, on a tactical level, it would mean, let's say, for search marketers, right, SEO focused people, it would
Mhm.
be that they do this activity, either they do it or maybe someone else on their team do it for them, and they gather
Yep.
this, like they create this kind of a map, and using those insights, they then go on and do their topic research and all of the other tactical stuff that they do typically, right? So instead of starting with keyword research, what they do is figure out these motivations and pain points of their customers, and then they use them to lead their keyword research, to lead their topic research. Would that be the right approach?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely
Hmm.
the right way to think about it. It's like, let's start here. We can still use these tools, right?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of marketing tools that we can use for different things. Whatever channel you're looking to like really own and participate in, yeah, use what you have available there. But I think the biggest thing is it has to start with something we know is like a major important point. Like sometimes you'll figure out like, oh, in all of our best customer journeys, they all hit the same milestone. We never talk about that milestone in that person's life, and especially if you're B2B in their career that's happening. We never talk about that. Weird. Why don't we make more content around that? And there might be like, that's not an SEO play. Or somebody might be like, well, why would we pursue like how to become a VP of marketing? Well, we found out for all of our best customers, when they became a VP, when they graduated from a director level to a VP or CMO, that was a really important moment when they decided that they might consider using a software like ours. So shouldn't we be in front of everybody going through that transition? Right? Wouldn't that
Hmm.
be a helpful email to write? Wouldn't that be like a great ad to run on LinkedIn? And we can run it against people who are recently promoted from director to VP of marketing and just say like, hey, newly promoted to VP, like we have a guide for your first 90 days. That sort of stuff, like all of a sudden it informs, like I said, everything, not just search. Yes,
Hmm.
search, but it should inform everything else.
Right, right. Um, okay, so I really want to get into how search can be used as a marketing channel, right? And um, normally speaking, I know you're not a big fan of these new terms coming up in the industry, because they conventionally mean the same thing. For example, I heard you talk about dark social, how like
Yeah.
at the core of it still is just good word of mouth in a digital format. But what I want to get into is this demand capture versus demand generation thing using
Yep.
SEO as a channel. So conventionally, marketers look at SEO as a demand capture channel, right? So in other words, it's commonly known that SEO only makes sense as a channel for you if you have demand for the problem or the thing that you want to sell online. So people search for it, you rank, you gather that intention, and you serve their intent either with your product or information. But do you think SEO can be more than just a demand capturing channel? Do you feel like a website content, for example, especially search focused, can also influence the buyers and potentially generate new demand for the problems or the product someone wants to bring more attention towards?
Yeah, I think two things. Number one, I think a lot about like sell them what they want and give them what they need. Not in like a bait and switch kind of way, but like you said you wanted this, but what you really need is this, right? That sort of thing. And I know because here's all of these stories and experience, and like that's the thing about this thing is you think you should do this, but that's really a mistake. You should be doing this other thing or thinking about it this other way. Which is absolutely true. People search for things all the time, and you're like, oh my god, like look at these search results. These are terrible. This is all bad advice because people are googling like how to something, and you're like, don't do that. Never do that. Like, why would any? And all the things are, all the SEO blogs are like, yeah, here's how to do it because that's what you wanted. And you're like, no, I don't know. Come on, help them, right? So I think that is a piece of it where we can kind of do like, we can give them what they actually need. That kind of creates demand where maybe there wasn't before. We see this with Sparktoro. There's not a tremendous amount of demand out there for audience research. We're having to create that demand. I think search can play into that, but I think there's other channels too that you kind of have to move in tandem with. I think you can do it with search, but search, it's very rare that I see a company where I like look at their website and I'm like, all right, you are doing everything right. Not like from a technical standpoint. I think that's mostly a waste of time. But like from a content standpoint, right? You're canvassing everything. You've made really smart plays around these usual things that I would recommend for clients. Like it's very rare that I'm like, you're doing everything right. So there's usually a lot more demand they could capture. Because at the end of the day, again, we just want to be on that consideration set. That is the job of marketing, is to give our sales team or our product an at bat with a customer. Either starting a trial, there's, taking a demo, they're like, we just want to give them that chance. And after then, we kind of have to let this idea that marketing has to own all revenue. Well, if we own all revenue, then we also own product and we also own sales. So those departments should report up to the CMO if we're ultimately on the hook for revenue. But we don't get to have any input on product, and we don't get to have any input on the sales stuff or the trial or the onboarding or anything. Like, if we are going to own it all the way to revenue, we have to own it. We have to have input there. But I think from a search standpoint, I think where the opportunity is, Usman, is like when content does more than one thing, right? If you're creating a page and the only point of that page is to influence, maybe get search traffic, that might not be the best investment for the business. I would rather invest in pages that will pull search traffic and will get us in front of potential buyers, right? That demand capture. But SDRs can use it for cold outbound. Sales can use it for reigniting closed lost deals or deals where they've gotten ghosted, and that might be interesting. Can we run ads to this? Like all of these other, I think about that stuff a lot of like, I think we're just done with the days where SEO can live in a silo. And it's like, all the other marketers leave me alone, and all the other parts of the business leave me alone. I'm here for rankings and traffic and keywords. And that's what I do. Like that worked from 2012 until whatever, 2019, 2018. I don't think that businesses can afford to do that type of thing anymore. Like we've seen it with like the blitz scaling companies like Monday.com. Everybody's like, wow, look at all this amazing traffic and all this stuff. We're seeing with generative AI where, these LinkedIn fake influencers are like, we get 1 million site visitors a month from generative AI content, right? They're always selling some sort of generative AI tool. But like, if the generative AI tools like Jasper and Copy.ai aren't running those playbooks, and they're the tool themselves, I don't recommend anybody else run that playbook. But we see stuff like that, which gets back to like the obligation we have to like put out good things. But I don't know. I think there's other avenues, and content should do more than one thing. Search is just kind of like a distribution channel for it.
Right. So would you say, like, if I give you a small scenario, let's say, if you play into a SaaS category where, for example, imagine, we have a software that offers, storage like Google Drive, right? Dropbox, Google Drive, those kind of companies. But they do it in a way, like their value proposition, let's say, is that, hey, our platform is way more secure than Google Drive or other platforms. Let's say that is their value proposition. That's what they're selling in their positioning and as a USP. In that case, no one might be looking for their brand exactly, or imagine if they don't have volume for generic terms like storage software or something like that, right? Just imagine that. Would you say they can still use SEO as a demand generation channel if they target topics such as, is Dropbox, is Google Drive secure from hacking or something like that? And then they create that piece of content. They give away exactly what the information, the search intent, they, like, basically fulfill the search intent, and then they present their product as a better alternative. Would that be something you would consider smart, or potentially using search to generate new demand for the product?
The problem is, I think a lot of products exist and they're just, I don't think every product needs to like be its own category. I think that's kind of silly. But I think the piece that they miss
Mm-hmm.
is they're like, yeah, like also consider us, right? They make that blog post or whatever, or they rank for, Dropbox alternative. I worked with a couple digital asset management software companies in the past. And they're like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
SharePoint alternative, Dropbox alternative, Google Drive alternative. Great, make those pages. Like get into that consideration set. Absolutely. But if your only value prop is like we're more secure, but we're more secure for who? Like who cares about that? Because I don't think that's enough of a, to be chosen over like brand folder, binder, or something like that. If you're the two people that usually need something like that, who are you're either like a big company or you have too many resources. You're a design agency or an e-commerce brand or something like that. And you have to like again like dial back and be like, all right, if our unique value proposition is our security, our buyer must be different than those, because those buyers don't care. They think it's fine. Like security is security. It's fine. You can still do stuff like
Right,
that,
right, right.
but I think it again, SEO people have historically gotten so obsessed with keyword research that they forget like the business and the customer. And they're like, all right, cool, I'm going to do this keyword. And it's again well-meaning. It's not a moral gap. You're not bad at this. There's just a skill gap that you need to close up. And I think that is like an understanding of like and also having that input of like, I'm going to make this, but like, who am I writing this for? Like, who buys us, right? Like, who are our ideal customers? Have we even figured out product market fit, or like, are we pursuing that? Is SEO really the right, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. We're like,
Yeah.
if we haven't even figured that stuff out, maybe search isn't the right play yet. You can do content marketing, which I would definitely advocate for, but I don't
Mm.
know if it's necessarily, do you know what I mean? Like if we're really like role playing this and troubleshooting it, I would want to back out more and be like, have we figured out these other things before we pursue search?
Right.
And also like, have we
Right, right.
created any sort of like what I call content IP around the problems our customers have?
Right. Yeah. Um, no, that makes total sense. I think again, so what you're saying is before determining the channel, let's fix the foundational stuff around the product and around other things that come way before marketing. That makes total sense to me. You mentioned very briefly about those generative AI articles, right? There has been a case study recently. A few, I'm sure you know about this that blew up in the SEO industry, and everyone was talking about it. So, like, someone stole someone's traffic using AI.
Yeah, the SEO
Uh,
heist.
do, yeah, the SEO heist,
Yeah,
exactly.
I wrote about it like 8
So,
months.
do
I
you
wrote
have
about it like
any?
8 months ago. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Do you have any thoughts about that?
yeah, tons. First of all, it's written by a guy who sells a generative AI tool. Let's talk about incentives, right? The incentive is to say, look at all this, buy my software. Look at all this, buy my software. Here's the problem: is if you look at the website, it's it's garbage. Like it's not like this guy has done. He has 2 of these case studies. This SEO heist guy, and I've even emailed back and forth with him where I've said, hey man, just show me the revenue you generate, because these 2 websites are for like Excel things. Like he just spins up 10,000 pages about like random Excel. Like, how do I move a row in Excel? How do I delete a cell in Excel? And it's like all of this like very long tail Excel and Google Sheets content. But then the product is a $250 a month product for CFOs. What? Why would a CFO ever buy a $250 a month product because they found you by Googling, how do I delete a row in Excel? Like like that inflates traffic because that's high schoolers Googling that, college kids, random people that don't know how to use Excel. Those are not your customer. You didn't get those from customers, right? The goal is just to inflate traffic. Like I come up from a very sketchy, like niche websites, like affiliate blog. Like that's my background, is like the sketchiest of all sketchy SEO stuff. I've seen all that. It works in those industries. I don't recommend you doing it if you have an actual business. If you're running an affiliate blog where like everything tanks and you can just delete it and make a new one, do it. But don't do this for your business where you have employees and like this is not the strategy to employ there. And you can see the website even right now, like it kept going up and to the right and it's started falling off. Right? Like I said, I looked at it 8 months ago. I said this is a sham. He wasn't, and also like it's just a lot of like, oh, and you can buy our generative AI tool. But I was like, how much money did you make off those articles? And he's like, that wasn't the goal. So wait, you guys did all that work and like you were just hoping that like it was just to inflate traffic to sell your generative AI tool. Like it's not actually generating any revenue for the business.
Yeah.
So the problem is, Usman, like that screws people over. Like the in-house person at that company is in trouble now. They're having crappy meetings. Why isn't this making us money? Like, why did we waste all this time and effort on this? Like, it ruins people's careers. Like, you have to take this stuff more seriously. And I think there's a level of obligation and responsibility that goes with sharing stuff on the internet. It's not just about going viral on LinkedIn with some dumb hot take. Somebody's going to try to do the thing you're telling them works. And if it doesn't work, they're going to have a harder life. I think about that a lot when I create content. It's not just content. Like people are going to try to do these things. So I have to come at it with that level of responsibility.
Yeah, totally. It totally makes sense. And of course, I mean, apparently it looks like, I guess Ross Hudgens reported that first, but it was really easy to find the website that was being talked about. And then apparently the traffic is already starting to decline. But yeah,
I love
I
that
guess
somebody
like
found my stuff. I love that. I think like they probably did the same thing I did, but I'm just not in the business of like dogging people publicly. So like I said, I put it in my newsletter. Like I have a Loom video that's 8 months old, like doing all this stuff. But like it's also why I'm not on Twitter, and it's also, Usman, like why I don't participate in like the SEO community at large. Like it's a lot of like who can just find the weirdest, latest thing and like impress each other, but like we don't buy from each other. Like if you run an agency, you should be impressing your clients, not your peers, by like finding the weirdest SEO thing, right?
For sure.
So like
For
I know,
sure,
like, but like a lot of us have known about this person doing this thing for almost a year. It's not new. He just got a lot of crap because he called it a heist, and people were like, "He's stealing." And it's like that's not stealing, it's just SEO. If I get the traffic, you don't. Like that's how that works.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the stealing part, the heist part was, I guess, like it people just took it like in a different way, because even if you're like, if you just exclude the part where they say I stole the traffic, like this is how I did it. Almost every other SEO includes some form of competitor analysis and looking at the keywords other websites are ranking for and then trying to rank for them. I guess like for me, in fact, I also have some beef with semantic SEO, where people try to just create robotic content. So like they structure sentences in a way that search engines can really pick them and talk about entities, etc. Like we cannot do that without making it at the expense of customer resonance, right? Like you cannot create 100% search engine friendly content without compromising on the customer experience of it. So yeah, that doesn't really make sense for the revenue or the customer generation for the business. It might result in a traffic influx, of course. So but talking about the way SEO is changing and this overall search landscape is changing, I'm really interested to know, what are your thoughts how an SEO should be operating in starting in 2024. Like, because if we're only creating textual content for search, it feels very narrow today, at least. So would you say a search marketer needs to think differently? Do they need to do something differently on a tactical level? How does it work for them if they want to succeed in 2024 and beyond? How they can be a really fabulous kind of an SEO not just a stereotypical one who can drive traffic and not revenue, etc. How they can have like a holistic impact for the business.
I think you need to start understanding SEO as a distribution channel, right? What are we distributing? We're distributing content. And
Mm-hmm.
you level up from being like this hyper focused SEO person to being a content marketer. And then you level up from being a content marketer to being a marketing leader in one way or another, where you understand multiple channels, you understand the business, you can help out sales, you understand these different functions within your business, you understand product and how product roadmap informs content, which helps you, like that sort of thing. You also start to understand like the difference between like getting a user, getting a activated user, getting a paying user, getting like all of those sorts of things. You start to figure that stuff out instead of just like, am I ranking number one? Who cares? Who cares if we rank number one, right? At ActiveCampaign, we had the great traffic panic of 2021 when everybody freaked out because we had lost like a ton of traffic. Like traffic was down 20% month over month. Usman, it took me 30 minutes to find out all that traffic was because less people Googled our brand that month, and our top blog post by traffic, which was ranking for company slogans, which had nothing to do with the business, just a list of 100 company slogans, got less traffic. And people were like, well, how do we get it back? I'm like, we're already ranking number one for company slogans. We can't get it back. Just people aren't Googling that. I showed them Google Trends. Over the last 5 years, just less people care about company slogans every year. It's just not a
Right.
thing people care about anymore. They're like, well, we have to get it back from somewhere. Why? And all of a sudden you start to figure out like, oh, are you guys getting compensated based on traffic? Did you guys make some promise to the board that we were going to increase traffic? Did the CMO promise the CEO that we would get a certain amount of traffic to the blog? Is there some sort of incentive structure here? Is that why we're obsessing over getting it back? You can't get it back. Nobody cares about this anymore. Well, we have to. Why? And all of a sudden you become a savvier marketer, right? And you take full advantage and have full control over your career instead of being just an SEO person. I want to see more people transcend that, where you understand about journalism and conceptual scoops and trend jacking and all of this other interesting stuff that makes you a broad, like, again, I'm really obsessed with helping people build a defensible career, whether you're a consultant, a freelancer, in-house, or some mix of that. Most people are a mix. Figuring out what that looks like. And I think that requires like adding skills to your skill set, not just figuring out how to get better at SEO. Well, now for the next year, I'm just going to focus on link building. And the year after that, I'm going to learn technical SEO. And the year after that, I'm going to learn. That's a waste of time. Like you can only apply for jobs that say SEO specialist in them, right? If you want a truly defensible career, you
Yeah.
have to understand other things. And that's fine. Like if you love SEO, cool. I did for a very long time, right? And I still do. I just understood like what is my main goal here is to enjoy my job and get big outcomes for people. Well, that meant if I wanted to do both of those things in the long run, that meant expanding my skill set. And I think that's
Right.
the core of a lot of it. If you want to be at the table, you want to be able to explain the ROI of your work, you have to learn these other skills.
Right. And when you say other skills and expanding your skill set, do you mean expanding it to other channels? Like, for example, if I'm an SEO, right? And especially this is like sparked from my own curiosity, right? Because like I'm an SEO,
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how I can, build a very strong career moving forward, how I can secure my position in any company that I'm working in, and how I can have like a future that is well associated with the way marketing will work for years to come. So should I be thinking about, for example, how do I grow a newsletter? How do I start a podcast? How do I do other things? And is there an SEO, element that I need to think about those things in the context of, or is it like I just say I'm a marketer. Search was one channel for me in the past. Now I'm learning other channels, and then one day SEO will be one of the 5 channels I work on, and that would be just it.
Yep.
So which one would it be?
I think it's the second one. I think it's, every so often I'm just stacking not just channels, but also functions, right? I'm a marketer. I do marketing, right? And SEO is a piece of that. And then for me, I also got really good at chatbots. I realized I was working with a lot of
Mm.
software companies. Everybody was using chatbots. So I got really good at it. And then it turns out they don't work. Like I became world class at this skill. And we thought they were working, but they were really just pulling conversions that would have filled out a form anyways. So, and a lot of people actually prefer forms because it autofills, right? Like
Right,
it was
right.
silly. But we all got excited about drift, so we all did that. But I realized like if I want to be good at SEO, SEO makes money. And if I want to make more money from SEO, this little conversion point sitting in the bottom corner of the website, I should pay attention to that. I should learn that. Right. And I learned copywriting. I learned email marketing. I learned partnerships, and that's all marketing. And then I'm also going to learn other functions. I'm going to learn sales. I'm going to learn how sales works as an organization. I'm going to learn the jobs of these people. What does a BDR do? What does an AE do? Right? How do they do champion selling? Like that, just even understanding how they sell into the enterprise, I'm like, oh, that totally informs the content I should be making. That totally informs how I think about the emails that I write. Like all of that sort of stuff, like it pays dividends to not only learn your like add pieces to your function, but like what other
Mm-hmm.
function gets us to the outcome? Who else do I need? In my case, I need sales and I need product, which means I should pay for Lenny Rachitsky's community because Lenny's newsletter is mostly product people. I would argue it's all tech people, right? But it's a lot of product people. And if I want to understand how product people think about things and what they're doing, they're asking all these questions. I never even heard of this stuff, right? But I'm in that Slack, just taking it in, participating where I can, learning where I can, really understanding product, really understanding sales. Again, like it builds a more defensible career than just SEO, which is not even a full marketer.
Right, right, right. Really interesting. So talking of this cross collaboration between different departments, different teams within a company, right? The end goal is always to drive more revenue, acquisition, all that stuff. Um, I think I was listening to a podcast where you talked about the role of marketing and sales in a very unique fashion when it comes to driving revenue. So what you said was, if marketing is supposed to bring in qualified leads that are ready to buy, do we even need a sales team? So this really intrigued me about the role of sales and the responsibilities of marketing. What do you exactly think should marketing be responsible for, like across all of its different channels, when it comes to attaching their actions to business outcomes?
I think when it comes to attaching marketing to business outcomes, to revenue specifically, it's understanding marketing does a lot of different things for the business, right? And it's not just acquisition. That's where we focus a lot, but marketing also has a lot to do with retention, right? If your brand sucks, you're not going to retain people. I know this might sound silly, but like we forget that like there's all these other things that go into retention, right? There's the customer success people, there's account expansion, there's all these, again, when you understand business better, especially whoever you work, I work with software companies, like we're talking a lot about that. The like there's all these other things to understand. So how am I influencing retention? How am I influencing, and that usually means just like being close to those teams. I want to know from the sales team every time somebody mentions a blog post. I want to know from the success team what emails have we sent that customers have talked about, that sort of thing. And a lot of that just looks like good internal marketing. Because a lot of times we, again, only look at net new revenue and we're on the hook for like pipeline over and over and over. I think marketing should be responsible. I think it is nice for sales and us to sit side by side, lockstep, on the same side of the table and both own revenue together, right? And success should probably sit or that should sit under one of our teams here. If we're going to truly own revenue, we have to be able to have input on this. It also means as a marketing leader, you have to have input, like I said, on product and things like that. I think in terms of owning, like if you're like, hey, we need marketing to own something, I think that looks different in every company, depending on whether you're like product led or sales led or something like that. In a company like Sparktoro that's small, in terms of team size, like marketing owns 100% of revenue. That's the only way revenue happens, is if we've done marketing things. In other companies, like you're doing cold outbound, and that is owned by the sales team, so that's not considered marketing source revenue or marketing influence revenue. I don't know. I think there's a lot of pieces of this, but it feels like one of the best ones to anchor on is pipeline, like qualified pipeline. Who are the people
Right.
in the deal stage? And I think also committing to having an SLA with sales, which is super important. I said that recently at a conference. People were like, what's an SLA? It's just a service level agreement of like, I'm going to bring in this much pipeline and you are going to do these actions, sales teams. Right. And if I find out that you haven't called 35% of the leads that we've brought in because you said they weren't qualified or you didn't have time, then we have a serious problem. Because if you're only going to look at marketing as working at closed revenue, I have to have influence over the actions you're taking to get us there, right? The process and things like that. So I think pipeline is like the handoff point of like, we have brought this in. Now, whenever you have metrics, people are going to game those metrics, right? So it could end up being like if we're like, oh, you have to deliver so many MQLs. Well, I'm just going to ratchet up the MQLs and none of them are going to be qualified. Like that's often what happens because you have a great month and it's like, well, let's do 20% more the next month and let's do more and more. And you get into these like bad situations. I think a lot of companies would have a huge benefit of just like wiping the board clean and being like, what's our reality right now? Right now, what is our actual reality? Not where was it last year? Not what did we promise we were going to do and, kick off in 2021, but where are we right now? Like, what is our deal cycles up 50%? It's taking longer to close sales. They're coming in with way more requirements. Our sales team has been discounting more and they shouldn't be. What's happening there? Like what are the market conditions? This is the stuff that a lot of like executive meetings, what they talk about that they don't share broadly is they talk about like larger macroeconomic forces of like, will our business exist in 6 months? Not from like a funding or profitability standpoint, but like, where's the world going? And are we meeting them there? Where's our audience and our customers going? I know that was a convoluted answer. The short answer is pipeline. But there's a lot of considerations that dance around that too that we have to talk about.
Yeah. And within this context, how do you think one get past this problem of attribution then? Like, do we trust the CRM or do we are you a big fan of self-reported attribution? A lot of, Refined Labs people talk about that. But I've noticed RandFishkin is not a big fan of it. What do you think about measuring the
Nobody who's
impact of
actually looked
particular
at
channels?
Nobody who's ever actually had to look at self-reported attribution thinks that that's a great North Star. Like, if you ever have to look at it, people just put like web, internet. Like, and also let's talk about like how flawed the human memory is, right? We have primacy and recency bias. I remember my first touch point with you, the first time we interacted. I remember our most recent one. You did this today. You're like, I remember when I found you. And I remember that we're talking today, which is really the same as first touch and last touch attribution. But we have to, like, your memory is like, as humans, our memory is flawed. But if I asked you to be like, what is all the interim things? Name me every LinkedIn post you've ever read of mine. Do all these other, like, how many touch points have we had? 5, 100, 1,000? I don't know, right? That sort of thing, that's where it gets messy. So whenever anybody goes, oh, it's just self-reported attribution, that's what you should really look at, not software. I get it, but you're wrong too. Because I looked at self-reported attribution at ActiveCampaign, and that's a mess. When you're doing that trial volume and that, like, all of a sudden it becomes really, really hard to parse. This is actually like a great use case for generative AI is to like figure out that sort of stuff. But like, I don't love generative AI for content. I think it just drives the cost of like garbage commodity copycat content to zero. But it's really powerful in analyzing like big data that then informs what we create.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't have like a preferred attribution model or anything. I think you just need to we just need to lower the stakes a little bit. Attribution was meant to figure out like whether your ads were working or not. That's what it was for. And then we wanted to apply it to every channel. Like attribution models don't work from social because they're looking for people to click over from social, and all the social platforms disincentivize that. If I click a link on LinkedIn, it goes, wait, did you want to click that link? And like tells me to go back to LinkedIn first.
Yeah.
Right? So how many clicks are we losing there? Right? And how much is somebody seeing us and loving us on LinkedIn or YouTube, and then they Google the brand name? And then the attribution, like, yes, attribution software is flawed. I think you have to have an attribution. Here's the thing, like, it's one of those things like, do we all agree this is wrong? Yes. Are we all okay still using it? Yes. Okay, great. Because then you get into bad situations where it's like, well, we're not going to do social media anymore because we don't see an ROI. So then you stop posting on LinkedIn for a year and you're like, what happened to our pipeline? Why aren't our ads working? Like all those things. I think it's more, Amanda Natividad and I were talking about this from Sparktoro. She thinks about it more in like programs. Do we have like, instead of like channels and attribution, what is the program we are running? Great. We have a great program going with office hours at Sparktoro. Let's add another let's do a newsletter. That's another program. That's the right way to think about it, is like, what are our campaigns? What are our programs? What are our sprints? That sort of thing.
One last question about the execution of this, by the way, like from a tactical standpoint. When you say, for example, if someone is posting on LinkedIn, organic, social, and that kind of content, how do they, and at the same time they're working on SEO or maybe other channels, do they need to segment the impact or different channels specifically from conversions, like trials or demos or something like that? Or should they be looking at other kind of measurement, like, hey, people are interacting better with our LinkedIn content or something like that?
I think where this gets messy is we fell in love with tools and data. And we forgot that marketing all works together. And as a marketing leader, it is your job to say, we are going with this marketing mix. And we're not going to make this, like, we are looking for all of the marketing. Like, if I'm a CMO, I want my SEO team talking to my social team. I want my social team talking to partnerships. And the only way that they really care about each other, that's what we're really talking about. You need them to really give a shit about each other and about their stuff. I want you to get more partners. I want my affiliate leader to get more affiliates for our product. But if I'm only looking for conversions from organic search, I'm not wasting time on that. I'm not wasting time on partnerships. That doesn't help me get more conversions from organic search. And this is where you get crabs in the bucket, just pulling each other down, down, down. And then all of a sudden you're like, why is nothing working? It's the culture. Instead of we say marketing as a campaign will deliver this pipeline. Is all the marketing working? Yes? Good. If it's not working, we start looking at things, right? We start saying, hey, could we support each other more? Could this program, could we do more integrated campaigns?
Got it.
Right? Where if we're that
Got
sort
it.
of
Got
thing.
it.
And I think that's the right way to think about it.
Right. Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much,
Cool.
Brandon. It has been amazing having this conversation with you. You've been very generous with your time. How do people get in touch with you? How do they find you? What is the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, here I'll give it to you honestly. Like, you can go on LinkedIn, you can try to look up Brendan Hufford, but it is probably going to be spelled weird. The number one way to find me is just to Google GrowthSprints. Yeah, perfect. Look in the description of this episode, or you can Google my name, Brendan Hufford. You can misspell it as bad as you want. Google will know it's me because of a unique name, not because I'm good at SEO. Or you can just Google GrowthSprints. GrowthSprints or Brendan Hufford, definitely the best way to find me. If you want to ask questions or you think I can be helpful in any sort of way, definitely find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there way too much.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Brandon, for taking out the time for this. I loved our chat today, and I'll see you on LinkedIn. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.